Good morning, this is Bob Hatton, and here are some very encouraging words. It's good that you tuned in today. I'm very happy that you've done that, and I think God will meet with you. We are following Paul as he's now left Ephesus. He's got all these people with him. He's got so many places to visit, and he comes to a place called Troas. And in Troas, he stays there for a few days. He wants to meet with the church. He wants to strengthen the church. Now, verse 7 tells us that it was the first day of the week when the church came together. And that's what they used to do. This first day of the week was Sunday. And some of the churches, they would meet very early because they had to go to work on Sunday. It wasn't a day that was free. They had to go to work, so they would meet very early before it was time to go to work, and they would probably celebrate communion. Now, this church, they were meeting in the evening, early evening, because when they celebrated communion, they would also have the evening meals. I don't know what time it was. If it was in Germany, it would be about 5 o'clock in the evening, so that at 6 o'clock they could eat together, or maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so they could eat at 6 o'clock. But Paul, he kept on speaking. There was no stopping him. And they were going up to midnight. They'd been together maybe 7 hours. He'd been preaching for about 7 hours. And there's nobody stopping him. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever gone to sleep in a church service? Well, I must admit, I've been tempted to go to sleep a few times, especially at conferences in the afternoon. Oh, it's sometimes so tiring. I've never ever experienced that somebody's preached though for 7 hours. Been in services where people have gone on for 2 hours or a little bit longer, and that's been quite difficult to concentrate and to listen. But 7 hours. But the people are listening to him. He seems to be very interesting because nobody's going home. They're all staying there. But there is one young man. His name is Eutychus. And Eutychus is getting tired. And Eutychus, he's sitting on the windowsill. And at one point, his eyes shut. Now, the Bible tells us it's gone dark, and there are oil lamps are burning, and the fumes coming from the oil lamps, they really bite your eyes. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I was once in Sri Lanka, and we went to meet somebody who wasn't where he was supposed to be, so we had to go and look for him. And when we found him, he was a pastor. He wanted to join this group of churches that I was visiting, and he asked us, he begged us that we should come and have a look at his church. So we went to have a look at his church. We asked him how far it was, and he always said it's close by. Yeah, well, we walked for ages. It started to rain. We eventually came to his church, and he was so proud of showing the building. It was just like a garden shed, maybe a room for a spade and a lawnmower, maybe a dustbin would fit in there. It was very small, but he was so proud of that. And then we wanted to go back to the car and travel on, and he said, "No, you must come and visit my family. My family are waiting for you." So we went to visit his family. We had to drive a while. How far away do you live? Oh, it's close by. He said we got out of the vehicle and we had to walk again, and it was raining so hard. We eventually got to his family. His wife had made a meal for us. We had to eat the meal. We had to walk back to the car, and they told me that the meeting would be at 9 o'clock in the evening. So we're traveling. It's 9 o'clock, then it's 10 o'clock, then it's 11 o'clock, and it's 12 o'clock, and I'm feeling, oh, I can't wait to get to bed. I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. This traveling is so tiring. And we got to the church in a place called Dambulla at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the people were still waiting for us. It was dark. They didn't have any electricity, and they each had an oil lamp. They were burning oil to give them some light. And I remember going in there and preaching, and the fumes from the light, they were biting in my eyes. It was quite difficult to preach, but we had a wonderful time with those people, especially afterwards as we prayed with them. But that's another story. You see, Eutychus then, he goes to sleep in the windowsill. He loses his balance and he falls out. And Paul goes and he raises him from the dead. Now, that is a bona fide miracle, what has happened. That is a real miracle, and I don't want to try to undermine that at all. But I'd like to give us some spiritual meaning to this story. You see, this young man, like a lot of other young men and women, or even older people they're falling out of the church. And it doesn't just happen immediately. You see, he's in the church, and we know young people who are very active in the church, but something happens as time goes by, and they start to withdraw. Some do it very suddenly. Some other people are. It just happens gradually. They change the position in the church. They were very active at one time. They couldn't do enough. Everything you couldn't give them too much to do, because they seemed to love the Lord, and they did everything. Now this Eutychus, I imagine if he was staying there for so long, he was like this guy, but it's getting too much. He's tired, and the fumes are getting into his eyes, and he moves his position. He either goes to the back of the church where the windows are, or he goes in the church building, or he goes to one of the sides. The windows are open, and he needs the fresh air because things are getting stale in that church. And he sits in the windowsill. Maybe he's looking outside instead of looking inside. Maybe he loses the thread of what Paul is preaching, and he looks outside, and maybe he sees his friends, and he's waving to them, and they have a little conversation, and then he's back in the church, and so on. But as time goes by, and the way is longer, maybe difficult, maybe Paul is speaking about a difficult subject, and he's lost the thread perhaps, and his eyes start getting heavier. The fumes of the oil lamps are in there, this biting. He shuts his eyes just to get a little bit of rest, and before he knows where he is, he falls asleep. And as he's sleeping, he loses balance, and he falls out, and he's dead. It's 10 meters that he dropped, 30 feet he's dropped down. He's dead. Well, what can you do if somebody's dead? He's dead, that's it. So forget it, let's move on. But that's not what Paul does. Paul runs out. He's the first one there. He interrupts his sermon to go to this guy, and when he finds him, he puts his arm around the dead body. He loves this guy. And I'm wondering, during this time of the coronavirus crisis, this time when we're on a lockdown, where we can't have so much fellowship, where we're not meeting very often with one another, I'm just wondering, have any of our people fallen out of the church? Have they just gone missing without us really knowing it, because we weren't in contact with them? And as you look around in your church, I just want to challenge you to look. Is everybody still there? Are we missing anybody? Or what can we do if we are missing anybody? What can we do if someone's so disappointed that he's fallen out of the church? Well, Paul goes to him, and he doesn't argue with him. He doesn't tell him he's wrong. He doesn't tell him that he's got a bad attitude or anything. He just loves him. He puts his arms around him. And as he's doing this, something happens. There is a restoration of life in him. He comes back into the church. And I would say this is a ministry for us today, to bring people back in the church. We're losing people, and we're trying to win new people, but if we could win new people and keep the old people, the churches would be very, very big. I'm going to leave you with this challenge now, and hope that you find people who've fallen out of the church and you can bring them back in. Paul continues to preach, they celebrate communion, and then Paul continues to preach. He's got many points he wants to talk to them. He goes on until morning and the sun goes up. Never mind. And then he moves on to his next station. God bless you. Have a good day, and look for people who've fallen out of the church window. God bless you. Bob Hatton.